Welcome to the RPG Podcast.
And we are live.
Oh, God, Patton!
Presented by SHEATH. A Time Wheel production.
Okay, then, here we are once again, another episode of the Robert Patton Global Podcast. We're here with a special guest. They're all special, but none more special than Michael Phillip, host of the Third Eye Drop podcast and friend of a friend. It's been a long time coming. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. And this production is definitely next level for a remote podcast. I've never seen anything quite like this alchemy you have going. I need to know more.
Well, you're in the cabal now, so we'll give you all the secrets as you're willing to accept them.
Oh, I'm willing. Initiate me in all possible secrets, my friend.
I mean, we're both podcasters, and so it's there's no secrets per se of the trade, and we're just trying to get better and better as we go, slowly evolving. What I want to work on is lighting. Your lighting looks amazing.
Well, we'll exchange tips for sure.
So, tell me how you got into podcasting, if you don't mind, just to start it off.
Yeah, man. So I think with not even with just every creative endeavor, but if you reduce like everything human beings do down to its most basic essence, it's something absurd, right? I mean, I've made jokes to this effect before, but if you take a single mouth noise, it's absurd, right? It's a noise. It's literally just an absurd, meaningless noise into the void of existence. But then you put together all of the vowels and all of the consonants, and you have a sufficiently complex language with which to express almost anything, right? And in a way, I mean, if you just keep scaling this up, something like a podcast can be, anything from a way to, I guess, advertise a brand or hit on a pre-existing demographic, or it really can just be a completely open-ended medium for self-expression. And for me, for whatever reason, podcasting has become my way to make the sounds that I'm putting into the void, so to speak, have some kind of meaning, have, because everybody knows, everyone has that restless, roiling, spiritual ache inside their soul, and they fantasize about finding a way that they can, feed that thing or sate that thing or whatever. And for whatever reason, for me, podcasting has become like the closest way for me to do that. So,
to express yourself,
yeah,
like in the
right.
most, I find you like poetic, in your delivery of words, sounds coming out of your mouth, and it's quite inspirational. A little bit. Like it makes me feel bad about myself, like I need to read the dictionary. I mean, well, when you compare yourself to other people, like, oh, that guy's so smart or whatever, it's like, but you don't want to ever say I'm dumb. But when you just compare yourself to other people and you make an evaluation of where you are at in comparison, and it gives inspiration though to be a better. So listening to you can be a joy in the way you express yourself. I mean, obviously you have a resemblance of Terence Mckenna, who also had this,
that.
Just his voice is iconic. And so having that along with the vocabulary and what you're trying to express, your true self, it comes out in your podcast, Third Eye Drops, the Wonder Dippers, who you're the ultimate Wonder Dipper. You're dipping into the wonder of life and evaluating it with these words, and you do it very eloquently. And I was just trying to pay you a compliment.
I really appreciate that, man. I really appreciate that, and I definitely don't deserve any accolades on the level of being compared to Terence McKenna. But all of that said, I mean, I do find that comparison obviously incredibly flattering, and one of the primary reasons is not just his linguistic prowess, but his ability to keep it fun. You know, that's the other big piece of it is like, I know I opened up with this big grandiose thing about like podcasting is my way to like cope with the scourge of this human incarnation or whatever, but it's also fucking fun, you know, like and that's one of the other things that's so absent from, you know, this popular milieu of self-exploration and exploring big existential questions or studying philosophy or whatever, is it's just like anchored to this like boredom, almost like technical jargon, you know, just kind of like vacant of that novelty, that sparkle, that fun, that excitement. And there's very few people, and Terence McKenna is one of them, that managed to bring that back. You know, if you listen to him, you know, there's just so many hours of him speaking online, on YouTube, on podcasts, on whatever. And you can almost tell by the cues, like the auditory cues of the audience, that probably everything that came before was very boring and dry and academic. And then suddenly this psychedelic bard of just like novelty comes and just starts spewing fractal amazement upon the, you know, the crowd. And it starts with like little, you know, chirps of laughter and just like, you know, you start hearing the audience react. And I'm like that. I'm that audience member that's just looking for that thing, you know. And there are a few people that manage to marry those things, but it's hard to do. So that's something that I do mindfully try to embody myself. Is like, how do I explore this shit without making it dry, without keeping it fun, without taking myself too seriously? You know, those are all things like self-critical things that enter my mind when I'm doing this shit.
Well, it's a constant exploration. And one thing that came to my mind as you were speaking about Terence was this guy, Jordan Peterson, who's very prevalent in today's culture, thoughts, or, you know, evaluating what's happening. And it made me think of like Terence McKenna was the psychedelic Jordan Peterson, because he's teaching principles of self-improvement, very basic shit about like clean your room, you know,
clean your goddamn room. You want to change the world, but you got to clean your damn room.
Exactly. And these, you know, great thinkers of our past and present that influence us to be better people is, I think, what possibly you and I are also trying to become ourselves. Because I personally want to teach and help people learn how to be their best selves, you know, and I think that's kind of an angle you're coming from as well. Am I right?
Oh yeah, sure. And you know, to be completely transparent, part of this too is a prompt for me to do that for myself. You know, like part of this for me, it has been an unbelievable tool for learning and exposing myself to new ideas. And also it's a weird Trojan horse to get in front of people, you know, like it's a weird, like I'm this dude from a smallish city in Wisconsin with a bachelor's degree, and there's no reason why I should be having conversations with best-selling authors and neuroscientists and people who are at the forefront of trying to explain human consciousness and all of these things. But somehow I've gotten myself in that position. So it's just as much like, yeah, I really do hope it's bringing people something valuable. But at the same time, like I would be lying if I said it's not just a great tool for myself to deepen my own understanding and for myself to explore and have the kind of conversations I just want to have, you know?
Yeah, and they're so like unadulterated, so pure, these conversations. Like we're locked in. I know we're using electronic devices, but we're not being distracted by our other external devices. And the education you get from a conversation with a championship fighter from Albania I talked to last week, and one of those countries, Albania. Anyways, and just the journey, the struggle, the triumph, and there's always lessons, with these conversations. And I haven't talked to any neuroscientists. I don't know if I could hold that conversation for an hour, but perhaps if I just let the person talk, but we're growing. And even this conversation we're having is a effort in that growth of just more understanding. And I want to, that people were talking about Joe Rogan recently with this ivermectin controversy, and you're like, he's not a doctor. And I was my daughter said that to me. He's not a doctor. Listen to doctors. And I'm like, do you know the conversations this guy's had with the level of intelligent people, that he has to absorb some of that intelligence,
Well, yeah. And not to mention, I mean, this isn't a controversial thing to say, is that he's not a doctor, but some doctor prescribed that to him.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that is so sadly absent right now from the way that we conduct public discourse. Or maybe it's not even that it's absent as much as this really pernicious thing has taken root, which is that if this is something, choose your thing. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's this example or another. If this thing doesn't fit into my view of the world, with the group that I associate with what I believe to be true, I'm going to straw man it. I'm going to demonize it. I'm going to reduce it down to this cartoonish form that's absent of any value whatsoever, rather than look at the merits, the possibilities, or at least just at a minimum, like remain open-minded or acknowledge, like, I don't know, maybe I just don't know.
Totally.
And that inability to be flexible with what you think, or at least not get super emotional when confronted with something that doesn't jive with your worldview, that's a dangerous thing. And it leads into all kinds of danger. I mean, people are openly talking about this, but you don't really see a whole lot of action. People are openly talking about the division. They're openly talking about the, like I heard a statistic, I think just yesterday, that still something like 2/3 or 3/4 of Republicans just think the election wasn't real. They just won't acknowledge that it was real. And, and you could say the same thing about the other side as well on a whole host of issues, and that just like outright refusing something, and no, I don't have all of the evidence or statistics. I'm just using an example. Right. Anyone out there listening, use whatever hypothetical example. And that's so sad to me. It's the obvious, one of my favorite philosophers is Socrates. And Socrates was, he was so famous for just questioning people and breaking people down that he eventually got arrested and chose to commit forced suicide. Like if that's not one of the most badass things in Western history, I don't know what is. And we've lost, and everyone has universally recognized the greatness of that, right? I mean, every kid walking around at least knows the name. They may not know what he's famous for, but they know the name. Like what percentage of people who lived 2,000 plus years ago do we still know their name to this day? And we've lost that. Like, we've lost that Socratic sparkle of just always questioning, always returning to the fact that we don't know. We just fundamentally don't know anything. These big concepts that underpin our society, our identity, our ego. They're mirages, and they're mirages that we should be investigating and questioning and rebuilding and remodeling as we learn more. But instead, we're just like retreating into our partisan corners. We're retreating into comfort. And I think that's really not only dangerous, but terrible for self-development,
Well, yeah, I mean, I wrote down The Man in the Mirror, Michael Jackson, very famous song. It all starts with us and self-reflecting on our own belief systems that we might need to call into question for, and be willing to admit that you are wrong. Like, so many people are not willing to admit that they might have the facts wrong. Like maybe the coronavirus came from a meat market, maybe it came from the lab or whatever. But you want to, dig your heels in the ground and this is my truth, and I'm sticking to it regardless of whatever new information comes out. But for me, a realization I had was, I joined the Iraq War in a time of war when the propaganda was heavy that brown people are bad, that, the Muslims in general, like they're all out to get us. And kind of naively, stupidly, whatever, I kind of believed that. And it took my wife ultimately questioning people. People don't want to be called on their bullshit. It's uncomfortable. And like when she questioned me, I'm like, did you not see the news? Like,
right.
They're bad. But then it's like, she's like, have you ever met one? Have you talked to one? Like, and I'm like, and then, so we have to evaluate ourselves. And so many people aren't willing to do that. I pat myself on the back. Like, I feel like I've outgrown that naive belief system based on just self-evaluation. Like, what? Wait a minute. I don't even know anyone. All I've seen is these movies that portray them this way.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of examples of, peaceful, loving, caring, successful Muslims, and just like, don't look at what the news is telling you is what I'm finding on both sides. Sure. On both sides is what people need to get,
Yeah. Yeah. Not only the news, but I mean, the news, rightfully so, gets this rap because clearly they're preying on low-hanging fruit. They're preying on fear. They're preying on, people's political affiliations. They're the way that they self-identify, and they portray a set of circumstances that might be a threat to their identity or the way that they identify. And then, that elicits an emotional reaction. So you're essentially watching something that is, although it may not be unfactual, it's manicured in such a way that manipulates your emotions and gets you to come back through manipulation of very base emotions. And this is something that, not just him, but so many philosophers warn about. But the whole Socrates line, particularly Plato, he warned against trusting your emotions too much. He warned against associating and conceptualizing your deepest self in terms of your emotions. And he had a phrase for this. It was something like the world of sights and sounds or something like that. And what he meant by that, by not associating too much or getting too caught up in the worlds of sights and sounds, is that it distracts you from not only your true nature, but it really clouds your mind. It really clouds your mind with this like overcast of clouds and shadows that influencing your ability to interface with the sun behind those clouds, like your true self, your true nature, your true being, true wisdom. And what that true wisdom is unclouded. This is why they use this terminology, is like, it's unclouded, it's clarity, it's light, it's being able to pierce right to the heart of a situation with insight that isn't predicated upon your things like we've been talking about, your emotions, your political affiliation, your idea of yourself, your ego. And we're, our rush to associate with emotions in that way, and our willingness to continually put ourselves in these situations where our emotions are being manipulated. It's dangerous, man. And it's not, but my original point was, it's not just the news. It's like people demonize the news and then they'll go into their internet echo chamber of choice and not realize they're doing the exact same thing to themselves in a new way, So it's like, I don't know. I think the only prescriptive thing to do is enter all of this stuff with curiosity. Enter all of it with like, oh, look what I feel like when I'm going here. Look at what my unconscious predispositions are when I enter into a conversation. That to me is the kind of self-reflective, critical thinking that I'm just not seeing, sadly.
This episode is brought to you in part by Element Kombucha. It's a new sponsor. We're very excited. They sent me a care package and I drank them all. I can't even show you. I could show you this empty bottle right here, but it's Element Kombucha. They have CBD infusions, THC free, really tasty blends. Kombucha is good for the gut bio. So if you have been taking antibiotics, it's always good to take some probiotics. And Element Kombucha is sponsoring this show. They're supporting us. So we're asking you to support them. They actually have really good prices. It's like $10, $15 for a 6 or 8 pack on their different options. They have variety packs, or you can just get the Summer Vibes blend, whatever you want. It's at elementkombucha.com. Promo code RPG11 will save you 11% on your purchase, and they'll know that we sent you, and we would appreciate the support.
Last but not least, SHEATHunderwear.com. The greatest underwear on the planet, the underwear of legends, the underwear that keeps your balls from sticking to your legs. That's right. This is the best underwear because it keeps your boys cool. Check out SHEATHunderwear.com. Back to the show. I had an instance this past weekend, and it was people talking about Biden, and he's a little, his mental state is not completely like sharp, and it was pointed out to a friend of mine in our friend group, and he got so mad, immediately jumped to the defensive, like, he's smart, he's better, and he just immediately went to like, he's better than Trump. But it was like this goblin came out. He got so defensive, and yeah, sure, like you could always probably justify he's better than Trump in your mind, because of whatever ideas you had about Trump. But we weren't talking about Trump. We were just talking about him, and right. He got like immediately he took it to Trump and like comparing him to Trump, and I was just like, whoa, dude, like it was totally reactive, totally emotional, and it was kind of almost funny in a way because like the psyche and what you were kind of explaining.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's like you slap somebody with sunburn or something. It's just this unconscious reaction of emotional distress that is really, pretty unwarranted. Like maybe he viewed that as a dog whistle for some other way of thinking that offends him or something like that. But who knows? But yeah, those rushes to emotional reaction to me are, I want to say they're perplexing, but sadly they're not perplexing, because I really do see how people get in this predisposition to be offended, to be, and it's funny because, you know, the main narrative is that it's people on the left who are serially offended. It's people on the left who can't take a joke. But man, you see it on the right too, and it comes out in completely in ways, you know, like with that example that I alluded to earlier of not believing the outcome of the election. It's like, you're just being a sore fucking loser in your own way. And I'm not like, again, I'm not picking on either side, because I truly, when I hear about something happening in the world, when something happens to me, I do not apply a political filter first. I really don't. Like I see why people do, but I don't. I genuinely do not apply a political or ideological filter to the shit that happens in the world. It just doesn't feel right to me, you know?
Well, I mean, and people are people, whether you're on the left or the right, and I guess something to do with original sin. Like, we're all corruptible, and so to place this benevolence on either side is naive.
Mm-hmm.
They're all fucking playing us, and we're all just pawns in this, I think, as some kind of social experiment. I feel like something's happening on top, above presidential level, like
be.
I mean, yeah, and possibly it could not be. Could all just be people are trying to do the best they can with what they have, and, you know, like, as far as politicians are concerned, just trying to, it's human nature to take care of your people, you know, and like the people closest to you. And you start off with this idea of changing, you know, society for the better, and then reality maybe sets in that it's a lot more complicated than that. And then you just kind of seek your own self-interests ultimately while you're in power. I don't know, though.
Yeah, the grand conspiracy always kind of looms, right? It's always a possibility. I mean, that there is just huge amounts of unseen power exercising control over the minds of people and over, you know, the game of politics. It's always there. But McKenna does have a great rap on that. You know, his sort of the I think it's the line that sticks out to me is that no one knows what's going on. Have you heard that whole rap of his where he's talking about the true conspiracy is the conspiracy of complete and utter chaos and novelty, just yo-yoing up and down, and like just crazier and crazier shit happens because that's the way that the universe functions. And, you know, this gets into his whole kind of overarching novelty wave theory, where he thinks that information just complexifies over time. And, you know, he would talk about another rap, time is speeding up. Have you heard of that one? The time is speeding up one. And what he means by that is you're getting, you know, a second may still be a second, but how much more information in that second is there today versus 1,000 years ago?
Wow.
Like, you had nature 1,000 years ago, right? You had bugs crawling around, you had people running around, but the internet didn't exist. You know, books didn't exist 1,000 years ago. Yeah, never mind. Books definitely existed, but you know, hard drives didn't exist. Telephones didn't exist. Televisions didn't. You know, like, all of that information still exists in the same bandwidth of time. So this is what he means by time is speeding up, and now by complexifying every instant, the opportunity for crazier and crazier shit just keeps happening. And that's what we're seeing in the weirdness of reality. We're just seeing, you know, the variable that he called novelty just speeding up and yo-yoing, and things getting crazier and crazier and crazier until we eventually hit this omega point, or this singularity of some kind, where the nature of reality fundamentally changes. And people like to pretend that he was wrong because 2012 didn't happen. But let's just cut out a date. I think it's pretty objective that he was pretty fucking right. That shit is just getting weirder and weirder and weirder and harder to predict, but also at the same time, because shit is trending weirder, easier to predict. It's just like there is nothing that could surprise me at this point almost. Like if aliens truly showed up tomorrow, I would have probably like a decade ago been 10 out of 10 surprised. Now it'd be like a 5. You know?
Yeah, it'd be like,
It's
of course,
yeah,
almost.
Yeah.
I mean, for 2012, I traveled up to Colorado to the mountains in case there was a polar shift
Oh, wow.
in the oceans, like kind of, because there was all these prophecies of a shift, right? And we didn't know what it was going to be, but clearly some sort of shift has occurred. Maybe it wasn't exactly in 2012, maybe it was 2016, for instance, but reality is no longer what it was. It's much more complex and emotional. It seems like like even just going to the bathroom 1,000 years ago, you would be sitting there maybe thinking or whatever, but now we're all looking at our phones and checking the news and getting constant updates with whatever's going on. We got to be connected and what's going on, and it's gossip. And I mean, gossip has always existed, but to this level, it's constant and ever changing. And 2 days later, whatever it was, the problem is there's a new one now. And
there's a whole. No, I was just going to say there's a whole universe of gossip and speculation that you can just like sink and meld right into that thing to the point where it completely just takes over your brain, right?
Yeah, and then on the brain, some of us are more right-brained, some are more left-brained, and I feel like communicating only with people of like-minded thought patterns is very limiting, and I feel like all of us have been doing this a lot for the past few years, let's say 5 years. And I saw a podcast recently with Trevor Noah, who's the host of The Daily Show, which I was like not loving for like since John Daly was gone, but he had on John Daly. Sorry, thank you. He had on Dan Crenshaw, this right Republican guy, and then the left, and it was such a agreeable kind of conversation where we're not that far off. I think we're just not talking.
Totally, man. Yeah. To open-heartedly enter a discourse with a disposition of wanting dialogue. Like this is something that we have slowly eroded away, even in the tradition of philosophy, where dialogue, dialogos, as the Greeks called it, used to be a primary way of trying to get to truth. Like, if you read any of the Platonic texts, a lot of it is dialogue. It's like him and other philosophers talking about concepts of like, what is an ideal civilization? This is what the Republic is about, for example. And over time, academic philosophy got away from that because they're like, no, you can't prove anything through dialogue. You can't reach a truly sound, finalized measurement of truth from dialogue. So it's not really useful. But people don't work in terms of final truths. I don't even think reality works in terms of final truths unless you're just talking about hard physics and you're doing like calculations or something like that. Everything is in flux. People's feelings, bodies, opinions, maybe reality itself is constantly in flux, and dialogue itself is a way to like surf that flux. And if we're not, entering into dialogue regularly with people that we perceive to be on the other side of an issue or somehow apart from us on an issue, I really think we're committing a sin, weirdly, against humanity itself, because what that indicates is that we're not actually trying to resonate with our fellow man. We're not trying to reach an understanding. We're drawing a battle line and staying there and firing shots,
trying to be right.
Yeah,
you know,
trying to be right, which what the fuck
Yeah.
does that even mean? You
Yeah.
know? And John Vervaeke, who has this amazing series. He's a professor at the University of Toronto, and he has this amazing series on YouTube called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, where he essentially like goes from ancient Greek philosophy all the way up through, you know, modern cognitive science and all of this stuff, and tries to help people, give people the tools they need to meaning make. And he talks about dialogue in this way, where we have now, even if we're having a dialogue, like we're pointing to, people tend to, with someone from the other side, people tend to approach like we're having some kind of verbal fight, right?
Yes.
But what we should be doing is entering into that dialogue, figuring out what I can learn. Where are my weaknesses? What can I learn from this person? Why does this person believe that? Instead, we want to straw man their opinion. We want to, like I was talking about in the beginning, we want to reduce their opinion down to this cartoonish, ridiculous thing where we're saying someone's taking horse dewormer, you know, like, or whatever it is. Like, it doesn't matter what it is in instance. It's, if you're rushing to straw man the other side and not look at their strengths, you're actually weakening yourself and you're weakening your own argument. And I'm not saying the whole point is to build the best possible argument so you can destroy the other side. I mean, I guess it comes down to, what's your goal? Is your goal to find common ground, to increase understanding, or is your goal to like go to war against people that disagree with you? I guess that's the first question you have to ask yourself. But for me, it's definitely the former. Like, I'm not interested in ideological supremacy. You know, I'm interested in curiosity and exploration.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that you could be wrong is a good preposition to going into a conversation with someone. You know, I'm interested in the truth. You know, I guess that's cliche, but that's why we want to have these conversations. Who is right, or, you know, whatever right is. And I think there is probably a right. Maybe it's a percentage, you know, more right than wrong, because we all don't really know how to move forward the best way with 7 billion people on the planet. You know, it's like, who has the answers? We're just trying to figure it out, I guess, and work together, you know.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And okay, so I did have a couple of questions conversation, and one of them is like a good segue, I think, from here, because we have trying to find the truth in these conversations, and then Third Eye Drops has a sort of psychedelic background, and how psychedelics might help in the, you know, help us get to the truth or an understanding where we can all kind of coexist peacefully, you know, with a common understanding. What are your thoughts with psychedelics and their role in this?
Yeah, this is something I almost got into before. But I think in the context of where we just came from in the conversation, if you are ready to soften the walls of your reality tunnel, if you're ready to admit, hey, maybe the way that I view the world is limited, not quite right, missing something, psychedelics is a great way to prove that to yourself. I mean, there's something there's multiple places I always go to, almost on every single trip. One of them is realizing how foolish I am, realizing how little I know, revisiting the fact that I shouldn't take myself too seriously, laughing at some of the things that I value, you know, laughing at some of my physical possessions. Like, I remember the first time I took a significant dose of mushrooms, I was looking around at my apartment laughing at stuff, because I was like, oh, this completely nonsense piece of whatever decoration on the wall. At some point I thought that was important, and I put like a bunch of mental energy on it or something. Just stuff like that. You just look at everything and you're like, wow, I'm so fucking important, aren't I? I really, and that's really valuable to just, in a weird way, it sounds like I'm making fun of myself, but in a weird way, it's like giving yourself a break from taking everything so goddamn seriously all the time. So that's one thing. That's one huge piece of influence. On the sort of opposite end, something that's equally influential is when it brings you down into the sort of pit of revisiting your mortality, and the fact that it's just marvelous and awe-inspiring and amazing that you're also directly plugged into that kind of flux that I was talking about, the feeling that everything is just kind of moving and streaming in this kind of weird fractal way, where it's just this like river of being just constantly coming into existence. But then at the same time, you're aware of the fact that things are constantly going out of existence, and that you're in the process of coming and going, and that it just feels very real. Like I am in the process of not being here in this form anymore. And then that's like another equally powerful influence, maybe even the most powerful influence for me on doing something I want to do with life. Doing something that is inspiring, doing something that gets me excited, doing something that gets me to interface with wonder and awe and ideas that make, that really stir me, because it's funny. Jen Sedini, or Jen Aronovich now, her and her husband posted something this morning. And it was this kid who was going to see a movie, and someone from the news interviewed this kid on his way into the movie. And it's like, you got to imagine this is like a 9-year-old kid. And they're like, oh, why are you excited to see this movie? And he's like, I'm hoping it'll crack me up. I really haven't cracked up in a while, just really crack up. And I shared that, and I captioned it with "me before mushrooms," because it's not just, because yes, you do sometimes get in these actual fits of deep gut busting laughter, but also crack up in a way of like absolute devastated sadness, like, because it's cathartic, and psychedelics take you to these extremes sometimes, just like that. Like you'll be laughing the deepest laugh and just bellowing the most like horrified cries like right after that. And that's part of cracking up too, because in daily life, where we're surrounded by the same shit, the same actions, the same people, you lose sight of those deep flavors of being alive, of like being afraid, being elated, being terrified, all of these different things. It's like it like reform. It gets you back in touch with the whole kind of like, I'm making this like weird fluid motion with my hands right now. It's like, it's like, if you're constantly in this state on a daily basis, I'm clasping my hands together really tight right now for people not
like clenched. You're like clenched.
Yeah, you're just like, your ego is this and your actions are this. There's not a lot of flexibility. Psychedelics come and they just go like, whoa, and they're like, oh yeah, all of those things. I have access to all of those things, and I've been out of touch with those deep, bitter and sweet flavors of being alive. And it just inspires action, whether it's wanting to be happier and laugh more, or whether it's wanting to take advantage of your limited amount of time in this incarnation. It inspires action, man. So that's in a lot of ways why I do anything creative, because it just reminds you that, man, you don't have forever, and you forget that. And psychedelics will wake you up to that in a very visceral, impossible to ignore way.
Yeah, of all the psychedelics I've done, which are most of them, I think mushrooms, like golden teachers, are probably the most easily to process and digest and for the transition into this other space. And what you were talking about, like with the laughing and the crying, I have, we all have our phone and you always have it on you. So last time I was in one of these journeys, I had it and I was like, I want to capture this moment, like, because I'm laughing hysterically while I'm crying at the same time, because I realized, like, SHEATH and what we've built over the course of 10 years, and it just like all hit me at once, like in this weird moment where I was happy and like proud. But we never really stop ourselves in daily, like we're always going, and it's constant progress, and we know, like, it's hard to take a moment to like process, I guess. And sometimes just taking like mushrooms, I like to do it every couple of months personally. Some people would less, some people just need maybe one time or never, for that instant. But it helps me slow down and like enjoy what earth life.
Man. The slowing down, I mean, that's a whole another one of my raps as of late, is just in the face of everything always being faster, everything always appealing to your emotion, everything always demanding your attention. You have to somehow create space to do that slowing down, or you just get sucked out and spread over the bread of everything in a way that you just can't stop, like unless you have an alarm on your phone that goes off and says time for mindfulness, unless you have a plan where you're like, every 4 months I go eat mushrooms with a really close friend or by myself or whatever it is. If you don't have a way to slow down profoundly, you're out of touch with reality. To use that Platonic example from before, you're stuck in the world of sights and sounds. You're detached from a more clarified reality. Another great Platonic myth, the allegory of the cave. In that myth, you're stuck just watching the shadows on the wall. You're enamored with whatever play is going on in the world that's consuming your attention at that time. And I really do believe that all of that's fun. The game of life is fun. We should totally play that game, enjoy it, play it mindfully. But you got to remember, that's a game. Like, that's a finite game that you're playing. And slowing down, I think, is the only way to do that. But then also to recontextualize what you're doing with the game. Revisit, how am I playing this game? Do I even care? Do I want to be even playing this game? Or is this game just bewitching me into playing it, So I think slowing down through psychedelics, or slowing down through a contemplative practice, or journaling, or whatever it is, it's like, it's just so valuable. And I think people intellectually know it, but they're really bad at doing it. I mean, I know I am. I've gone in bouts of like, meditating every single day for months and months, and then just fall off and not meditate once for months. It's an ongoing battle for sure.
The meditation I do daily, and it, because psychedelics, meditation, exercise, these moments of clarity come and can show you, like, if you're in a bad relationship, like, how do you end up in a bad relationship and you're in it for like a decade, but you never maybe slowed down enough to think, I could get out of this relationship, or and by that I mean a job, could be a relationship, whatever path you're on, like stopping, slowing down, reassessing to make sure you haven't veered off course in the rush of life, getting caught up in it.
And realize it's never too late. It's never too late to go back on course. Doesn't matter if you're 25, 35, 45. It doesn't fucking matter. It's like, Why would you just commit to a path you don't want to be on because you're 55? It's like, well, I only got 2 decades left. I might as well just ride this shitty, bumpy, loveless road into oblivion. Like, no, that that's not right. That's not right.
Right.
And it's never too late either.
Yeah, but not everyone has access or insight to access to psychedelics, and that that's not the answer to everything, because I think you can find a lot of the answers just through meditation, but it does soften the walls, like you said, of reality, so that you can reassess a little bit less constrictively. I don't think that's a proper way to say it, but you're just more open to new possibilities, I think.
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, by the way, I'm with you. I think my go-to for doing that kind of work is mushrooms also. And I don't want to make it sound like it's not profound or powerful. It's absolutely very profound and very powerful. And it can go from a fairly mild experience to one that turns the dial up to 10 if you just take more. Like you like double the dose, and you're doing hard work. That's just reality quaking, self-nullifying work. But I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, it's just cleaner. I've tried these other ones, and some of them are like DMT's too fast, ayahuasca's too messy for me personally. Yeah, it's straight to the point, and there's no like sickness with it, or at least very little. But
do you think that there's something to be said for that messiness of ayahuasca? And I don't know what your experiences with it have been like, but do you think that messiness helps in any way?
I mean, purging, it was mostly the physical messiness of it, the vomiting and the other side of it. And just like, I didn't find that as insightful as I might find other, experiences with other medicines. Whereas like with DMT itself, like that was profound in that I shot out of my body. I lost all connection with this dimension, or at least with my physical body. So I was in another dimension. I came back, and I saw the route. There's a lot of doors opening, and just to say what happened when I got to the other side, like the last door that opened was into a room. It was like a glass house. Everything was white, and there were jesters drinking tea at a table, and they were like conversing. And the guy like turned his head and looked at me and just put one lip to his fingers and was like, shh, like a shush sound.
Yeah.
And from that, we have all this under control. You don't need to be here. Go back to your reality and do what you need to do there. We'll be here. We'll take care of this side. So it's like they showed we exist. And to me, that meant consciousness exists outside of the physical form, but you have a job to do in your physical form. So go do that.
The prevalence of that trickster jester archetype inside the psychedelic experience in a very, very obvious, sometimes cartoonish way is so interesting to me. Like that was one of the things for me on ayahuasca, actually, and I've had it on pretty much every tryptamine I've done, but in a very malevolent kind of making fun of me in an abusive way happened on ayahuasca, where it was just like you're in that pit of not just sickness where you're vomiting, but your mind is in complete, like for me, my mind was just tumbling through chaos and disarray in a way where it was like being on a sickening psychedelic roller coaster of just like spinning and illness and feeling like I'm dying and really, really just going down the spiral of doom for hours and hours and hours in a way where it's like, I want this to stop, you know, and I was saying, please make this stop, please make this stop. And all the facilitators like, you can't make it stop. You can't make it stop. Like, you're gonna break through this. You're gonna break through to insight. You're gonna break through to power. You're gonna break through to all these things, but we can't stop it. And there was a very visceral feeling of that archetype taking pleasure in fucking with me. I'm being like, ooh, you came here to learn something. You came here for insight. How about if instead I go to all of your buttons and dials in your body and I just go 10, 10, 10, 10, turn everything to 10. So it's just like, you know, just completely being overwhelmed with everything. But on the other end of that, it did eventually break through, and I don't want to get off topic from the original point of the trickstery archetype, but I've even seen it in almost like a cartoon manifestation, like going like blah, 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 like kind of thing, where it's just what is that? Like why does everyone's mind go to that place? Why does everyone seemingly see this trickstery, gestury archetype? I wonder.
I was really surprised when I heard Joe Rogan's story after I had mine, which was similar but different. And the trickster gesture just shot him a bird.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, it's similar, like hand gestures, but I'm like, did I hear that? And then that kind of fed into my experience. But I believe that I hadn't heard that, and I think I'm not like gonna lie to myself, but. So multiple people are having this similar experience with no connection to each other.
Definitely. You know? Yeah. I mean, and you hear this all the time from, you know, facilitators who are doing this work full time, like shamans, and, you know, the prevalence of different things, different beings, different stories. They're like, yep, I've heard that same story 100 times of the big mantis thing coming to you and like doing something, you know. It's like, why? Like and this is, of course, you know, where this conversation could take a left turn into beings and into, you know, these, could there actually be non-local consciousness that we're interfacing with, that our brain or our minds struggle to make sense of, so they kind of paint them over with this weird concept that we have, where it's like, it's not a mantis thing, but I have nothing better to show you. So here's a mantis thing. Here's a jester, because that's all we can do. Here's Jesus. You know, some people swear like, no, I met Jesus. And it's like, well, some people also think they met a jester cartoon man. You know, it's like, and I'm not saying any of them aren't real or are real. Like, I just don't know, but I do know the experience is definitely real. And that's worth something.
And it's, you know, I feel like if it was taught ahead of time, because some of us take these things took them for the first time without any instruction prior. And I remember the first time I took mushrooms with my older brother, I was with my older brother. I was like 16, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was just they blended it in some orange juice. I killed it, and it was strong and it was powerful. Mm-hmm. And I remember at one point like wanting it to stop, and because I'm like, okay, this is going on for a long time. I probably lost all track of time. Yeah. But it was just the wanting it to stop. Whereas now I know it's going to stop soon. That's not something I need to worry about, but I was worried about it on that first trip. And if people could just be more educated in their experimenting with these things, you could get so much out of it. Mm-hmm. I think. And so if there was going to be a recommendation, if you were going to ever do a psychedelic, I would suggest mushrooms, but I would also suggest like watching, you know, hours and hours of YouTube videos to get the best possible experience out of it when it comes to preparation, intention. Don't just take it and go to a party and like be with a bunch of people you don't know. Definitely. You know, it's like, that's what I did. And I was kind of not scarred. I mean, but it wasn't the best experience.
Yeah, it can lead to confusion for sure. And it can lead to mental distress. not in a way that for the vast majority of people is going to be anything more than like an unpleasant roller coaster ride where it'll be over and you'll be like, oh, that's not what I expected. Fuck.
Yeah.
But you'll feel fine. You're not going to go crazy. You're not going to become schizophrenic for most people. I
Right.
know some people have, and I'm not trying to diminish the possibilities, because I do think that there are possibilities, particularly for people with certain predispositions, or like definitely if you're on an SSRI, you're never supposed to take a tryptamine until you're clean off of that SSRI.
Wow.
But yeah, no, I think there's a very clear reason that these things were used as sacraments, and in a non-dogmatic way, I think they should be treated as such. They should be treated as, this will put you in contact with your soul. For people who haven't heard this, psychedelic is actually a combination of two Greek words, psyche and delios, psyche and no, I forgot what the second one is, but it means mind manifesting. It means, or soul manifesting, because psyche to the Greeks was both mind and soul. So it's kind of the idea of, you take this to get in contact with your soul, or the essence of your mind, if you're not comfortable with the word soul. And that's the way I approach it, for sure, is like with a lot of reverence. And I would say over time, my reverence has only gotten deeper. Like since having those really brutal ayahuasca experiences, every time I'm entering in, I'm like, oh, here we go. Like I have, you fool yourself after a while about what the experience is. And then as soon as it starts to kick in, you're like, oh, fuck, here we go. It's just, now I remember what this is. At least that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I try to, like, now ever since I did ayahuasca, I haven't done it again. And with the DMT, it was like, they were like, we have this under control. You don't need to come back here. And I had more DMT that I planned on doing the next day, for whatever reason, and I dumped it down the toilet, and I was like, they said, don't come back. I'm not going to disobey. Like, this was a powerful experience that I'm not just going to take lightly and just be like, oh, whatever. That didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So
I had a similar, quick story. I had a similar experience with ayahuasca, and my experience with that was, we were down in Peru. It was a very intense 5-session thing.
Yep.
Where you go 1, 2, 3 sessions on the front end, take a break, and then 4 or 5 on the back end. And it was so, like, that set of circumstances I described, feeling just like I'm on this just roller coaster of devastation. And when I say roller coaster, I don't mean like going from low to high. I mean like going from low to lower to lower, just really feeling like I'm dying. I hate this. I would do fucking anything to make this stop. But then there's this weird thing that happens when you come out the other side, that you just appreciate life, just like standard life, because you've juxtaposed it with, here's absolute chaos. Here's not being in control of your faculties. Here's being in total emotional disarray. And then you go back to just being even, and you're like, oh man, everyday life is the shit. And that in and of itself is a really big lesson. But then on the 3rd session, that's when I had my don't come back here moment, because I got to this place of like placid, just beauty, and feeling like I was kind of one with the universe, yet also thinking as myself, and then also interfacing with like an entity that was just kind of like the wise old man, okay, here we are. Here's the place that you wanted to go. Like, what can I help you with? Like, what do you want? And it was just hitting me with just like waves of inspiration, like every creative thing I wanted to do. He's just like, here you go, here you go, here you go. And I was just like, oh my God, like, this is it. This is the pinnacle of my mind. It's the only time in my life where I truly, truly felt like I was having a quote unquote third eye experience where I wasn't half joking. Like I legitimately felt something in the center of my head to a point where I was like brushing, like kind of trying to brush my hair away. I'm like, is my hair in my head? But it wasn't. It was just, it was feeling just like a pulsing sensation right in the center of my head. And it was like anything that came to mind, there was no grasping. It was just like, boom, there it is. Boom, there it is. Boom, there it is. And I came out of that and I'm like, there's nowhere else I could go with this experience from there. So why would I enter back into like the pits of hell again, just in hopes that it decides to grace me with like lifting me back up to the heavens again? You know,
Yeah.
I get it. I experienced it. And I felt a very strong, like, process this fully before you even think about going back there.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And I ultimately went back one time, wasn't as profound, did leave my body again. But like, I haven't gotten a more profound experience than that from DMT. And with mushrooms, it's just it's the slowing down. It's just these little insights of, for me, I guess at this point in my life, accomplishment that I've never really taken the time to process. Or, you don't want to get like pat yourself on the back or anything like this. It's just like, okay, you did something, keep working,
Yeah.
There's no time for celebration. And if you do, it's very short-lived and you keep moving forward. I know we're running out of time, but something came up when you were talking, and I wanted to address two things. One is a story about salvia where I took, I did salvia one time. I was sitting right in front of this big, everyone has a big TV, right? So I had this big TV, and this was a long time ago. I was in the Army. I was not happy I'd already been to Iraq twice. I was in a marriage I wasn't happy with, and just like probably at a very low point in my life, and probably maybe why I was doing salvia to begin with. But that experience was so bad that I was just like, just let me go back to reality. I'll be happy, I promise.
Yeah.
And I hated my life at the time, and I ultimately ended up transitioning significantly, and my life is much better now. But when you said that, just let me out, I'll be happy. I thought that was kind of funny. Salvia is trippy. I don't like it.
That's what I've heard from everyone, that it's just really not a pleasant experience. And I'm good.
Yeah, I don't just take our word for it.
I'm not the kind of psychonaut where I'm like, I have to do everything. I have to do every single, psychoactive compound. That really doesn't, that's really not what drives my exploration.
Yeah. And you're at a level of like cognitive elevated level where we do whatever calls to you, but I don't feel like you need improvement on that level. Why anyone does
appreciate that
mushrooms, like, because for me it's like they say sometimes that it generates like neurogenesis, so it could make you smarter in a way. But like for you, I wouldn't think that would be necessary. But we all do it for our own reasons.
Little do you know the garbage that goes on up here, my friend.
Well, so that was
plenty of it.
That was literally the other part of the two things, and that was the other one, is the two minds, within ourselves, the negative self-talk, the guy like, you're a piece of shit, you're not good enough, you suck, you're ugly, whatever, you're too short, because you're. Yeah, that was funny. Just because you're so educated in the psyche, it seems, with all the philosophy you've studied. Like, what can you explain what that is based on your understanding?
Self-criticism in general, or what my
because there's like a voice in your head that says like, you're a fucking idiot, and you're just like, hold on,
Well,
who is that?
I get so from there's kind of two ways to skin the cat, so to speak here. One way is the more conservative David Goggins or Jordan Peterson kind of way, where it's like, look, bitch, you aren't perfect, and work harder. Just keep working on yourself. And there's another way to view it, which I think is much more popular these days, which is like, you're good just the way you are. You're perfect. You don't need, there's nothing wrong with you. And strangely, I think they're both true, because I think if you develop a positive psychical disposition in the way of like, everybody's just a work in progress, and nobody's bad for where they are. Nobody's bad for the hand they were dealt, or the strengths they have, or the talents, or the weaknesses, or whatever. And from that standpoint, we're all fundamentally good in our flawed state, no matter where we are. But on the other hand, if you want truth and you want improvement, you need to confront the wrinkles and be like, that's a wrinkle. I will work on straightening this. I will work on eliminating this wrinkle. And that's not something that should be avoided or whitewashed, like, and there's also Platonic wisdom to back this up too. Like, one of my favorite philosophers, again, is Plotinus, who's this later Platonic philosopher who wrote an immense amount in these books called the Enneads. And he has a famous example of like the self as a statue. It's like, if the statue has some shit that's wrong with it, if it has like a pointy edge, or it has a part that needs more detail, work on that. Don't pretend it's not there. Confront the reality of it and work on it. So I think there's a way that you can sort of marry those two things. And then there's the whole, neurological standpoint of like, why does the brain do this? Well, unfortunately, it's a bug and a feature of the human brain and the prefrontal cortex, because what makes us human in many ways is that part of the brain, because it allows us to be self-referential. It allows us to look in the future, think about the past, say, I don't want to repeat that mistake, or I really liked that, I want to do it again. But then within all of that, you get, I'm a fucking idiot, right? Because I did this and that was my fault, and I never should have said this or done that. So there's ways that it spins out of control and becomes a liability. So it all just kind of circles back in on itself, whether you're talking about it ideologically or philosophically or neurologically. It's this thing you have to grapple with,
Yeah.
and you get to be the decision maker through whatever tools you have at your disposal. And if you feel like it's totally out of control, then I think I just gave you some ammunition to kind of dig deeper into ways to get a different POV on that, or manipulate that. And I guess throughout this whole podcast, that's sort of what we've done, whether it's through self-work and in whatever myriad of ways. I think all of those things help to recontextualize that and help to make that a little more tactile, because it is hard to even understand how to get your hands on it sometimes.
Yeah, I try to like either turn it off, that negative self-talk, or reframe it into a positive. But I like your assessment in that, like, it might be pointing out some areas where there are wrinkles that you need to flatten out and get corrected. So that's a different perspective, because you can either give into it, have all this negative self-talk, and it spiral out of control, stop it completely, but then you might not be evaluating yourself. But there's some kind of middle ground that I think is probably the happy medium, and that will get you kind of in the right balance
Agreed.
mentally. So I
Agreed,
think
man.
we had this was fun. This was great. I was like stimulated. So thank you very much.
Me too. man.
I hope everyone out there listening this is probably one of the best ones for sure. So thank you very much, Michael Phillip, Third Eye Drops. You can get more of him there. I recommend listening to his conversations with Eric Godsey. They have some great mind melds. And anything else you would like to add, sir?
No, man, I appreciate you having me. Congrats on everything you have going. It's a beautiful accomplishment. I'm stoked for you and everybody involved. And thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, dude. Same likewise to you. You have a great thing going. Just keep it going, and like the cream rises to the top. So you got the cream, baby.
Ooh, thanks. Dollar bills, y'all.
Yeah.
You got to have both that kind of cream and the Wu-Tang kind of cream.
Yeah,
got
cash
'em
rules
both, and
everything
you're-
around me.
And you're in balance. You're in balance.
That's what we're looking for, and that's what we hope you found by listening to this podcast today. Thank you again. We'll be back soon. Until next time, stay free.
Godspeed.
Godspeed.